guys please give a round of applause to Pastor Jacob Waldo this morning?
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Pastor George. It is a privilege and an honor to hang out with the middle schoolers. I know not everyone can say that, but for me, it is seriously a privilege and an honor to hang out with my middle schoolers. Got several middle schoolers here. I got Mason, who just left me going into high school, and Claire's over there, and Mallory, and Gisela, and Katie, and Shayla just left me too. All these people are leaving me going to high school. Gemma just started though. Heck yeah, Gemma, right there. Liliana's there, and Kathan's behind her, and Jasmine right over there as well. So love hanging out with the middle school team. Love it. But today, I'm not going to talk to you about middle school stuff. I'm going to talk to you about obedience. So all those parents of the middle schoolers, yes, we're going to do it today, going to make it happen. But the title of my message today is going to be obedience. Why does it matter? Because that's the question. What for? Why does it matter at all? But just like show of hands, who knows the story of like Joshua and Jericho? Anybody? Everyone ever heard that thing? The better question is, do you guys know the song that goes with that? The Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Yeah? Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. And then you know how it goes after that? And they're going to talk about the men of Gideon. You may talk about the men of Saul. You may talk about Joshua, and then the battle of Jericho. All right, you guys know. Just my mom. My mom's here today. She knew half of that, so that's good. I just thought it'd be fun. We're just talking about Jericho a little bit, but not really. We're talking about what happens right after the Battle of Jericho. Because a lot of us are like, yeah, Joshua walked around and the walls fell down, right? Yeah, but what happened right after that? And so that's what we're going to be talking about. It's the story of Achan and the city of Ai, literally spelled AI. So they had artificial intelligence way back in Jesus' time. AI is how it's pronounced even. And I'm just going to give you kind of the summary of kind of what goes down, and then we're going to dive deeper into that. But essentially, God said, don't take any of the devoted things from the city of Jericho. And then, of course, Achan, he decides that he's going to take some of the things from Jericho. So God says, well, good luck fighting all the rest of the battles because I'm not going to be with you. So at the next battle at Ai, it doesn't go so hot. Things don't go the way they're supposed to. They find out that Achan did, in fact, take some of the things that God said not to. So Achan pays for it, and all the stuff is destroyed, as God said. And then God says, all right, I'm Team Israel again. And then they go ahead and win the battle at Ai. There's the whole thing. There you go. See you next week. That's it. That's it. But let me break it down for you, okay? So God commands the Israelites to stay away from the devoted things in Jericho. And we're going to answer like, why? Why does that matter? Or why is he saying that? Joshua 6:18 says, but keep away from the devoted things so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. And God is very clear what would happen. Don't take or destruction. You take it, bad stuff. Don't take it, destruction will happen. But what is not so clear is kind of the why behind it. Why can't I, God? Why can't I do it? This is like, he does it so often. He tells us something but doesn't quite give us enough information to us to have all the answers. He's just so mean about that. But it's fairly straightforward when we have the context of what's going on. In the Battle of Jericho, and really the whole conquest of Canaan, because they're going into the land of Canaan, God is bringing about judgment on the entire nation of Canaan. It wasn't because, they were like an obstacle or an inconvenience for Israel, but it was because the land of Canaan was in total rebellion to God. And more importantly, they were in league with the occult. And so God says, don't take the devoted things because they are demonic in nature. Don't take those things because they're totally anti-God, and you don't want to mess with that. Don't take those things because they will surely bring destruction on you. You don't want to invite the demons into your life. Just stay away from those things. So my first point, if you're taking some notes, is that God always has a good reason. Obedience, because God always has a reason for it. A good reason, in fact. When he asks us to do something or when he asks us not to do something, there's often a greater purpose in mind. And we often can't see it. Sometimes we can kind of see the big picture, but often, we don't see the whole thing. But God always has a good reason. And in addition to the demonic stuff that he's saying stay away from, God has something to say about the treasure in the city. The following verse 19 says, all the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. So this battle of Jericho, this is what we're talking about, Jericho here. This is the first battle that they win. They were just spent the 40 years in the desert. Moses was there, and then he hits a rock, and then he doesn't get to go, and then Joshua's in charge now. They're going in. First city they're taking. The first one. The first conquest of Canaan. It's the first city to fall. And if you know anything about God, or I might just tell you right now, he's got to think about first. He says, put me first before all other things. Give to me first of what you get. And this is the same thing. God is saying, this is the first of many battles. You guys are going to come in here and wipe these people out. This is the first battle. So all the wealth, all the money, all the loot boxes, your base belong to us. Everything here in Jericho, give it to me first. So now we know the why, right? We know the why. Don't take the devoted things and don't take the money. Really, he's saying, don't dip your toes into the demonic world and don't steal from me. Like that extreme. Don't steal from God. Who wants to do that? Okay? So we know the why, which makes and we have the context here, but it makes kind of what happens next pretty absurd when you understand, these are two things you don't want to do here. Because we see they take Jericho, and we find in chapter 7 what happens right after it. It says, but the Israelites were unfaithful. Shocker. Oh my goodness. Israelites unfaithful? No way. That is literally the story of them over and over again. They were unfaithful in regard to the devoted things. Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zimri, son of the Zerah, and the tribe of Judah, so many sons, they took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. Now, it's interesting to note here, it says, but the Israelites were unfaithful in various things, and then it just goes on to list one man. Achan, son of, whatever. Okay? Achan took those things. Only one man was really guilty here. Only one man took what God said not to take. Yet the entire nation was affected. It burned against Israel. It doesn't say he was mad at Achan. No, he said, Israel, I'm mad at you. This is just like Adam and the apple, right? One man, we're all affected. Or like David and Bathsheba, right? Like one man and the entire nation is affected. Now, here's a side note, freebie for you. Is there something that you are doing, or maybe something you're not doing, that is really affecting the whole church, this body of Christ right here? 1 Corinthians 5:6 says, don't you know that a little yeast leavens the whole batch of dough? Just a little bit explodes the bread to be this big giant thing. Just a little bit affects it. Just a little bit of impurity in a little glass of water turns it all dark. Just a little bit does it. And so think about it. Our sins, our mistakes, they hold us back from being used fully by God. Our reluctance, our hesitation, disobedience, they hold us back from reaching what God has for us. Either direction, whether it's sin or reluctance, we are not reaching our full potential. You're not being used by God to the fullest. And thus, the church is weakened. You tracking? The church is weakened when we sin. The church is weakened when we choose to go our own way instead of God's. So imagine if this church here, Creekside, what would it look like if we were all blameless, just like Jesus? What would it look like if we were bought in, all in, just like the disciples were most of the time? What would it look like? Just imagine it. All right, end of that free note there, okay? So moving forward, we see an unfolding of self-reliance, overconfidence in human strength, the I'm pretty much the best mentality. You see, they take the things and then they're going to attack the next city. So Joshua is sending scouts to check out the city because that's what you do in warfare. You check it out and see what they got going on there. And they investigate the city of Ai, and they come back and their report is pretty interesting. And then Joshua's response to their report is even more interesting. Find this in Joshua 7, 3-4. It says, when they returned to Joshua, they said, not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not weary the whole army. For only a few people live there. So about 3,000 went up, and they were routed by the men of Ai. This right here, this is overconfidence for real. Because later in the story, we find out that the city of Ai had 12,000 people there. And these guys are suggesting sending 2,000 or 3,000. Now, I don't know if you know math very well, but that's a lot less, like a lot less, 10,000 less, in fact, which is that's not ideal in warfare. You don't usually want to be that outnumbered, okay? So send only 3,000. Whew, my goodness. They were probably saying it like this. They're like, we just defeated the city of Jericho, a much stronger and tougher city to take just by walking around it. Are you kidding me? We could just send 2 guys to this city with some sticks and we'd probably take it. No problem. We got this. No big deal. Don't bother the whole army. Don't weary the whole army, Joshua. Don't do it. It's fine. This could have been some serious faith in God, right? Could have been. That's not part of it. It could have been. God was with them. He was with us in Jericho. He will be with us now. Surely we prevail. But either way, it didn't matter because God was, in fact, no longer with them. And they didn't know, but God was no longer with them. And we see it so clearly in Joshua's response, right? When you go, that one right there. We see it so clearly. It says, for only a few people live there. They just tell him that. And then Joshua's response right there between the quotation mark and so, you see it shouting at us, the silence. Joshua says absolutely nothing. He just says, all right, sounds good. Go do that. Right? Like it's screaming at you. He says nothing at all. And more importantly, he said nothing to God. He says, okay, doesn't consult with God at all, just takes his own initiative. The victory at Jericho, probably made him overly confident. And maybe he thought, we've got God's help already. I mean, he gave us this land, right? He gave us this land, it's no problem. He just assumed God was with him in the plan. And don't we do that so often? We just say, God must be with me. But we don't ask. He didn't ask. He didn't talk to God. He didn't put God first. If he had, maybe things would have gone totally differently. Maybe he would have talked to God and God would have said, listen, I'm not with you right now. Go deal with Achan. And then things would have been what was written there. He said, Joshua talked to God and God said, what are you doing? This man sinned. Figure that out. But he didn't. And so things did not go the way they should. He didn't do anything. Listen, my second point here is that God always has something to say. He's trying to communicate something to us. So obedience, why? Because he's trying to tell us something. He's trying to improve us in some ways, trying to help us out. But either we don't ask or we aren't listening, or more often we're distracted by our own self, our own things going on, our own busyness. My kid's got baseball, and then after that he's got baseball, and then after that he's got baseball, and then I have to sleep, and so I don't got time to do these things. Me. So with Joshua, he was distracted with himself. He was distracted by himself, and so he didn't ask. With Jericho, you can look at it, chapter 6. With Jericho, he is in constant communication with God. I mean, he just came out of the wilderness of the desert 40 years, and he's like, God, I ain't got no idea what I'm doing. Moses was in charge, and then you just said I have to be in charge now. What is going on? And he's on his face in the dirt, says that, crying out to God. What am I doing here? He knew that he had no power to win that battle. I mean, this giant city, giant walls, how could we possibly do that? But when the opponent was like way weaker, he was like, I can do this. No problem. I did it. I won before. I can do it again. So the narrative switches to me. I can do it. I got it. Rather than God can do it. Because the success of Israel and your success as well is always dependent on their surrender to God. Their connection to God. And Achan's rebellion showed that they weren't really connected to God because one link in the chain breaks the whole thing. And he's like, oh, I can do whatever I want. God said this, whatever. They're not totally surrendered to God. And therefore, they were powerless even before relatively small and weak enemies. And here's what it cost them. Right after it says the 3,000 went up and they were routed by the men of Ai, Joshua 7:5 says, who killed about 36 of them. And at this, the heart of the people melted in fear and became like water. Now this here is a reality check. It's a slap to the face to the Israelites. It doesn't really hurt that bad, but it's like, whoa, what just happened? Right? 36 men died. How many died at Jericho? 0. And they just walked around it, and 0 died. And now that's 36 men. It's really not a lot in comparison to the entire army because the Israelites probably had about 100,000 men at that time. So 36 out of 100,000 really isn't that much. It's not that big a deal in like strategic warfare type of thing. It's like, oh, we only lost 36. That's like not even like 0.1% or anything like that. It's so slim. But the meaning behind those 36 men is huge. It's disastrous because the defeat at Ai showed that without God's help, they ain't got no shot. All would be lost. And the people began to panic. The hearts of the people melted in fear, became like water. Oh God, I can't do it. What is going on? They melted away in fear. And logically, because without God, they're like, all our enemies can take us down now. It's a slap to the face. They're like, whoa, what are we doing? What happened? And this reality side of it worked because Joshua, in fact, falls on his face. We can see it in Joshua 7:6-9. I'm gonna paraphrase it for you. Here's how it goes. He goes, oh my goodness, why God have you forsaken us? What did we do? What? Change your heart towards us, God. Please don't leave us. Boo-hoo-hoo. That's exactly what it says right there. Okay. 7:6-9, look it up, exactly how it goes. And then God's response, we see this, Joshua 7:10-12. It says, the Lord says to Joshua, stand up, what are you doing? What are you doing, Joshua? Are you dumb? Okay, what are you doing on your face? Israel has sinned. They have broken, they have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things, they have stolen, they have lied, they have put them with their own possessions. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever is devoted among you. So God's like, what are you doing, Joshua? Get up. Why are you here crying to me? This is not my fault. I didn't fail you. You failed me. I told you. I said, don't take those things. And what did you do? You took those things. Why are you crying to me? This is your fault. Figure it out. Listen, it's not me. Somebody out there sinned. Why are you talking to me when you need to go out there and deal with the person who messed up? That's what he's saying right here. And so God continues and he tells Joshua exactly what to do. So nice. God's like, yeah, well, now that I'm done yelling at you, here's what you should do. He says, right after verse 13, says, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, which will be important. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, there are devoted things among you, Israel. You cannot stand against your enemies until you remove them. You see, Joshua says this to all of Israel. He gathers them all up in front of his tent and he gets on his pedestal with his boom mic or whatever and says, here, listen up, Israel, here's the deal, we're going to do this. And that's what he says to them. And he says this one day in advance. One day in advance, which is important. He prepares them. And then it goes on to say that God commands him, and he says, okay, you're going to go through and you're going to tell them, we're going to choose tribe by tribe, and I'm going to point out the tribe that it is. We're going to go clan by clan, and I'm going to point out the clan. They're going to go family by family, and I'm going to point out the family. Man by man, I'm going to point out that man. And Joshua goes on and tells the people, here's what God's going to do. He's going to go clan, family, tribe, that's what he's going to do. We're going to find out who did this. We're going to find out who disobeyed God, who stole from God, who has brought calamity on us all. Joshua says that one day in advance to all the people, and Achan is there listening to this. One day in advance. And what does he do? Absolutely nothing. Pretty wild. I don't know about you, but if I knew that I was gonna be found out, if they're gonna go, family, tribe, clan, down the line till they're gonna get to me, and I knew in advance, I might try to do something about it and say, listen, I'll just let you know it was me so you don't have to go through that trouble, and I don't have to have everyone let me know. Maybe I'll just come to you in the side and just tell you it was me. Sorry, But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything, right? He just sits there, does nothing. And don't we often kind of do that, We hope to avoid punishment, when we do something wrong. Achan was hoping to be overlooked, to get away with it. He was hoping he wouldn't have to reveal that it was him, to tell his friends, to tell his family, because none of them knew that he messed up, that he had let them down, that it was his fault that 36 men died. He was hoping to get away with it. I'll just hide in my tent all day and maybe they won't know. And don't we often do this? We keep something buried for the longest time, because we don't want others to know that we struggle with that, or we did that, or maybe we didn't do that because, for whatever reason. We don't want others to look at us differently, to judge us, right? That's like our main fear as humans. We don't want people to look at us in a weird way because we want everyone to accept us and love us. Yeah, I'm a perfect person, right? We got that persona. I got perfection on. I got my mask on today. Look at me. I'm always great. No problem. Whenever you ask me, how you doing? Good. I'm good. Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, how are you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm good. No big deal. I'm dying inside, but I'm great. Yeah, really good. No big deal. Isn't that the answer you always give when someone asks you how you doing? Oh, good. Yeah. I'm good. But, I just keep falling into sin and stuff. I just keep struggling. My marriage isn't going so hot. No one says that to you because no one really wants to hear that. Right? You come up to someone, how's it going? They're just rip out all of their feelings on you. And you're just like, whoa, I was not ready for that. Right? How you doing? I'm good. I'm fine. But in open confession and honesty, being real is granted, it's painful, right? Because it hurts because you want it. You don't want anybody to know. It hurts inside to let people know and let them in on your life because what if they reject me? It's painful, but it's also super, super healing. How do you come out of something that you're struggling with, or how do you let go, or how do you be open and say I messed up or I didn't do what I was supposed to do? It's so healing to tell someone about that, to talk to God about that, even better than that, because it's like the opposite of that. Being forced, to reveal something because there's no escape. Your back is against the wall. Isn't that way worse? Right, we know stories of pastors that have done that, or presidents who have done something, and then their back is against the wall, and they're like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do that. I would never do that. And then they're found out, and then it's just lack of respect for that guy now because they just weren't open and honest. So, back to Achan. He does nothing. Okay, and the next verse, the verses say 16 to 18, you will see that his tribe is chosen, Judah, his clan, the Zerahites, his family, Zimri, and then himself. They're all chosen. And here's the thing. God knew the entire time who did it. Right? The moment Achan touches things, actually before that, the moment Achan thought in his mind, I'm going to take those things, God knew it. Immediately, God knew it. Yet he kept it a secret from everybody else. His family didn't know. Joshua didn't know. His clan, no one knew. But God knew. And that's the third point. God sees everything. So why obedience? Because God's watching the whole time. Might as well be obedient because he's there looking at me. And this one might hurt for some of you. This one might hurt because this is like when the manager is around all the time. The boss is there helicoptering around you, and you kind of start acting a little bit better because he's there, but you feel like you have to now because he's watching a little bit. But God is literally, not figuratively, literally always watching. Always watching. He sees everything. He is omniscient. And for some of you, that's kind of scary because he sees all the mistakes I make. He sees all the bad that I do. And some of you, that's actually really comforting because he's always there ready to help me. He's right there. He knows when I'm going to be in trouble, and he's ready for me because he's always watching. Now, either way, either spectrum of that, it is a reality. That is the reality of our human lives here, that God is always watching. So looking back at Achan, I bet for him, taking those devoted things, it kind of pleased him a little bit. He was pleased to have the things. He was pleased with the thrill of breaking the rules. God said, I can't do it. I'm going to do it, right? Mom said, I can't take the cookie from the jar. Yeah, she didn't find out, right? Or he was pleased to have his wealth increase, got a little extra money today. He was pleased that he was not immediately found out. Doesn't that feel a little good? You're like, all right, sounded good. I was able to hide it. But those pleasures, although they're real, they make you feel good a little bit, they're fleeting, temporary. Because 36 men died. Because of what Achan did, because of Achan's disobedience. Now listen, the penalty of our sin, the penalty of our disobedience will always outweigh the pleasure that sin or that disobedience gives. In the moment it feels real good, but it feels right. But in the end, it isn't the best. Achan probably rationalized his disobedience in many ways. He probably was like, no one will know. No one will find out. Those things won't be missed at all. They're going to be destroyed anyway. So I can just tuck one in my pocket. No big deal. Look how cool I'll look in this robe. I needed a new style change anyways. Might as well take this Babylonian robe and look like a boss, like a king. Yeah, that'll be me. Those people that I'm taking this from, they're bad. God told us to destroy them anyway, so what's the point of taking some of their stuff? Because they're bad people. And bad people should be punished, and I should do the punishing. Me. I'm not hurting anyone. I deserve this. I'm entitled to this. Man, that is today. For real. It's me. I need this right now. But none of those excuses they justified. None of them justified what Achan did. And don't we also kind of make some of those same excuses, for our disobedience? No one will know if I don't do it. No one will know if I do it, or I'm just too busy. I don't feel ready for what God's asking me to do right now. Someone else will probably do that. If I just sit in the background, someone else will do it. That'll be all right. I've been there. I've been going to camp for so many years, 15 or more years, and leading in a lot of those years. And so often, I would feel called to pray for a student, usually that I didn't know, whether that was at service or we were just talking or at a game or something like that. And I'd feel like God said, I felt like a tug, like that feeling. You're just like, I should probably do that. I should probably pray for that person. And I would chicken out. And I'd be like, maybe not. Maybe I don't feel ready. I don't really know that person. That's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk to someone who I don't know because, gross, people, nasty, okay? And in the moment, after I chickened out, I feel relieved. I don't have to do it, right? Good. I don't have to be uncomfortable today. So much better. But in the end, I just realized that I was just a coward. And more importantly, I was just disobedient. Because the reality is that student probably needed me in that moment. And God knew it. God knew that student needed me to come into their life and say, listen, God cares about you right now, that he sent me to pray for you, to talk to you, to be in your life. He knew that my words through God would help that student right then and there. God knew it because God always has a good reason. But I decided to live in comfort, make excuses. And ultimately, I let that student down. I let God down. Now I'm a firm believer that God will always make a way. Even if I am not the way he ends up using. He wants to use me. He wants to use us. But if I fail to meet the call, it's not like God's plans are shattered. It's like, I was relying on only you to do what I needed to get done. No. He just goes to plan 2.0. Right? And then if 2.0, 3.0, and then he's got plans on plans on plans on plans until finally one of his servants, one of his creations finally steps up to what he's asking of. He will always make a way. Just to that guy right over there. So like in my students at camp example, every time, no joke, literally, I would feel like I should be doing something like this, and then someone else would just step up and do it. I would watch someone else walk to that person I was just thinking of, and they would pray for him because I was deliberating there for like 10 minutes thinking, I don't want to do it, God, don't make me do it. I don't feel uncomfortable. And then someone else just steps up and does it because they were obedient. And in that moment, that feeling of being relieved would wash over me again. Oh, good. Someone else is praying for them. I'm off the hook. You weren't really asking me to do that, were you, God? I was just in my mind, right? So relieved. I don't have to be uncomfortable anymore. What if I had been obedient? What if I had reached the call that God had for me in that moment? And that's the final point today, that God's way is rewarding. What if I had done something? Well, maybe God would have blessed me through that. Maybe God would have done something to me in that and strengthened me and grown me. In Joshua, right after all this happens, Joshua 8:2, it says, "And you shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourself." God had planned. Wild. God has plans. God had planned for the Israelites to reap the rewards of every other city they take, just not Jericho. So if only Achan had waited. Right? If only he just waited. If his greed and his impatience hadn't gotten in the way, he could have received so much more. But in the moment, he's like, I need it now. I need it right now. Give me that. I have to have it right now because I can't see any further. I need this now. I deserve this now. It's me. It's me. But if he would have just obeyed God at Jericho, he would have received so much more. So much more from the battle at Ai, because it says, and livestock. Plunder and livestock. That's an investment property. Because you know what livestock do? They make more livestock. Right? It's not just like a couple dollars in his pocket. He's got things that make babies and make babies. He's got an investment property. If he had just been obedient and waited, God said, I have greater blessings in store for you than that bar of gold you took and that robe you took. That was a child's play compared to what he said, I have in store for you. But he didn't wait. He didn't see God's vision, so he said, I got to take it out of my own hands. I got to figure it out. And so often we get locked into our present moment, what's right in front of us, the hurdle that God puts in front of us, and we see it and we say, no, it's too much. I can't do that, God. There's nothing beyond that. I can't see beyond it. The wall is too big, God. I can't take it down. I can't do it. And so we can't look at it, but we can't see how God has a blessing for us on their side. And so we fail, and you're like, I don't want to feel uncomfortable right now, so I won't step out in faith. But God has a blessing in store if I do, right? I might steal right now because I feel like I don't have enough. But God has a blessing already ready for me tomorrow. Or I might hold back from God thinking that I have so little, but God blesses those who are faithful with little. So the question of obedience, why does it matter? Why does obedience matter? Because God has a good reason. He's always got a good reason. Everything he does, everything he asks us to do and asks us not to do, God's got a purpose. He's got a reason for it. And he always has something to say. He wants to communicate with us. He wants to speak into our lives. He wants us to reach our full potential. And we need a direct line of communication with him to do so. He has something to say with us. And God sees everything. Nothing is a secret from God. Nothing. He sees all things. He is always watching. And shouldn't obedience just come so much more naturally when you see that God's always watching? So I might as well step up to the plate that he's put in for me because he's always there. He's watching me anyways. I might as well do my best all the time. And God's way is rewarding. Just like God has a good reason, his reason is often for our good. To bless us, to strengthen us, to grow us. Obedience matters to God. You can see it all throughout the Bible. Obedience matters. And so my challenge, my question for you today is what is God calling you to do? What is God asking of you? What is God asking you to not do? That thing that you keep in secret, that you keep doing, that you have felt the pull of God saying, maybe don't do it. Maybe that actually is God telling you not to do it because you're not supposed to be doing it anymore. I don't know your side, you don't know your life, but what is he asking you to do? What is he asking you not to do? And will you be obedient? Or will you be like Achan? And someone else is going to pay for your disobedience. Jesus, I want to pray that you give us an awakening in our minds, God, to know that you call us to obedience. And obedience is hard because it kind of goes against the grain of our natural lives, that we want to do our own thing. We don't want to follow whatever you want to say. So God, I pray that you would break that in our souls, in our minds, that it's not about me, it's about you. And that you've got a plan anyways, so get me out of the way. All about you. And God, I pray that we would not be reluctant. Not just reluctant obedience, I guess I have to, but no, I get to do what you're calling me to do. I get to lead here. I get to pray for that person. I get to do all these things because you are calling me to it. You think I can do it. So let me reach that calling, God. I pray that we will learn to be obedient as you are calling us to. Give everything to you. Pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.